Hello kids, Patrick Livingstone of EasyAnimalsToDraw.com, and today we're going to be drawing this animal. The St. Bernard, quite a famous dog. I'm starting off at the head this time. I put in 4 marks for the height and width of the circle, and now I'm lightly dotting in the circle. That way I only have to concentrate on the shape, but it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, not at all. Most important thing is the size of the circle is correct, and the size is correct in proportion to, for example, now the circle for the chest and shoulders and the circle for the hips. It's the proportions of the circles that are important. Each dog has its own unique proportions, and by getting the size and position of the circles right, you're halfway there to getting your dog drawing looking right. St. Bernard, of course, famous for rescuing people who got lost in the Alps in the freezing cold. And a myth arose that when the St. Bernard arrived, it arrived with a cask of brandy attached to its collar. I suspect that this was a dream of the people lying there in the cold snow waiting to be rescued, because in fact it never actually happened. They never did have casks of brandy attached to their neck, but they did save many lives. So drawing another circle which will help as a guide when you're drawing in the muzzle. A little bit smaller than the circle for the head itself, but the same technique. Draw it in lightly and then a little bit more heavily. And you can see, for example, the circle I've drawn for the muzzle is far from perfect, but it's good enough because the size and the proportions are correct. Now a triangle for the ears, or rather the ear, because I've just drawn in the one. And now we join up the circles to create the overall proportions of the body. You can see St. Bernard has quite a substantial body, which is typical of dogs that need to be able to handle quite cold climates. It can be very cold in the Alps. Now the lines for the legs, the guidelines for the legs. And as usual, the guidelines go right up into the circles, because you don't want your legs to look stuck on. The legs join the hips. The hips are part of the legs, and just as the shoulders are part of the forelegs. Now we're ready to start the drawing itself, starting with the eyes. Relatively small eyes. Compared to the size of the head. A little bit of eyebrow detail. Now the rest of the head. This is where the guide is very useful because it's easy to imagine that the ear, for example, goes a little bit outside the head, and now the muzzle, it comes a little bit inside the circle for the muzzle. Back to the nose, drawing in the nostrils. mouth, muzzle, the muzzle. The tongue. Maybe someone's told our dog about that cask of brandy. The mythical cask of brandy. Various details around the muzzle because the St. Bernards have a very large, strong, but very soft mouth. I imagine at times it's necessary to drag people out of the snow without hurting them. Large floppy ear. Front leg, paws and claws. And now the leg nearest to us. Now the hind legs. Quite a shaggy coat, so it's good to keep the drawing a little bit ragged, a little bit this short broken line, which gives the illusion of a shaggy coat. And we're almost finished. It'll be time for my favorite part. Just got to put in the tail. It'll be time for my favorite part where we remove the underlying scaffolding or structure of our drawing guide. And that's my favorite bit because then we get to see the drawing itself without the distraction of the guide. But as you can see, there are quite a few lines of the drawing guide up, particularly up around the head. And when I take those out, when I rub those out, I'm going to lose quite a bit of the drawing of the head, and I'm going to have to put it back in. That's just normal. That's just the way it goes. There's just no way around that one. So while I'm rubbing out the drawing guide, I can tell you that a little bit about the history of the St. Bernard. That it was in the year 1050, so more than 1,000 years ago. No, that's not quite true. Just under 1,000 years ago. At a snowy pass within the Alps, a monk named Bernard of Menthon established a hospice to aid pilgrims journeying to Rome, because at that time, the pilgrimage to Rome was a big deal for anybody living in Northern Europe. At 8,000 feet above sea level, so it's going to be fairly cold, with drifts as high as 40 feet, crossing the Alps at the pass where the monk lived was pretty treacherous. And over several centuries, the hospice monks developed powerful working dogs able to locate and rescue the unfortunate travelers who've been buried by drifts and avalanches. And that is how we got the St. Bernard. Very famous dog, but not a lot of people keep St. Bernards as their pets. They're a very big dog. But of course, everyone knows the story of the St. Bernard and the wonderful work they did, saving many, many lives. Even with a small eye, like the St. Bernard, it's still good to leave a little bit of white in it to indicate the reflection of light. So now time to do the shading. Big dog, the male stands at a minimum of 27.5 inches at the shoulder. And the huge head features a wrinkled brow, a short muzzle, and dark eyes, which all combine to give the St. Bernard an intelligent, friendly expression that was such a welcome sight to a stranded alpine traveler. Imagine that you were lying there in the snow, there'd been an avalanche or a snowdrift, and you're thinking if you'll ever see home again, and along comes this big, happy, friendly-looking dog to tell you it's okay, everything's going to be all right. The stuff of Hollywood movies. Defining the ear a little more. The ear is so big and floppy that it's even got folds within it, as you can see, almost like a curtain. Drawing in a bit of a brown patch over the eye, or rather shading it in. And now shading in the nose, which is semi-reflective. Now the dots where the hairs and the muzzle come out, a little bit reminiscent of a cat's whiskers. And because the nose is semi-reflective, I'm going to leave a paler part of the nose to indicate that it's reflecting the light a little bit at the top. That big soft mouth. For pulling people out of the snow. As the body is mostly white, don't need to do a great deal of shading. Although it's a big muscular dog with a shaggy coat, that disguises a lot of the muscles, hides them. So it's the outline that mainly defines the shape, the characteristics of the St. Bernard, because it's such a large, muscular dog. But its shaggy coat, shaggy against the cold, will hide a lot of the detail of its muscles. Now, the details of the paws and claws. And now the brown patterned shapes on the white coat, which are characteristic of a St. Bernard. So I've outlined the brown patch. Now go back in and shade it. Another brown patch at the top of the back. When a dog has a patched coat like this, it can be sometimes a bit of a challenge to shade it properly so that you get the feeling of the form of the body at the same time. The two can be fighting against each other a little bit. The patches act almost like camouflage, which, as you may know, is often used to break up the shape of things, particularly in the military. For example, ships at sea get a geometric shape painted on them to completely break up the shape in the hope that it'll disappear at a distance. It's a little bit the same with dogs that have a patched texture on the coat. Don't forget that if you'd like to download a PDF file with the drawing guide, just go over to easyanimals2draw.com. Google easyanimals2draw.com/St. Bernard and download the PDF file which you can print out. It will help you with your drawing of St. Bernard. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe and smash the bell to get notification of future videos. And if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. There we go. There's our St. Bernard. And until next time, happy drawing.